And now we're joined by our guest, Patrick Hilsman, columnist, and Lazar Berman of the Times of Israel, or rather, just Patrick Hilsman. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you back, Mr. Hilsman, again. We are talking about something slightly different than what we spoke about before on Monday. A tragedy took place. 7 people are dead. International community is...
Well, they're outraged,
they're at loss for words, as we all are, I suppose. And I wanted to ask you about your feelings about what happened yesterday, because, I mean, words cannot describe how we all feel, and it's only fair that we start by having some of your thoughts on the issue.
Well, obviously it's a tragedy to begin with, and we've heard a lot of people trying to attribute this tragedy to an accident. But if you look at the pattern of the targeting of rescue workers and of medical staff in Gaza, it's clearly not an accident. Who was hit might be accidental. They might have thought that they were hitting some other civilian convoy or just didn't care. But as Jose Andres, the head of World Central Kitchen, says, the vehicles in that convoy were targeted car by car. And leaks to the Israeli press have indicated that they were actually struck by drones, deliberately targeted. And currently there has been information in the Israeli press in 972 magazine saying that the Israeli military is using artificial intelligence to try and identify what they call terrorists, and that artificial intelligence identifies any adult male as a terrorist. So there are situations where just because they've detected that somebody is a male and an adult, they will open fire. Leaked drone footage has also shown them deliberately shooting at civilians, joking about the fact that they killed a horse while they were killing the civilians. There's no way to construe this as anything else other than a deliberate pattern of targeting rescue workers and humanitarian workers.
Yeah. It's a tragedy, and I think really sinister when you add that information you've just told us. And I think one commentator had this, told us just a moment ago. I mean, we have nearly 200 aid workers that have been killed since October 7th, since the offensive began in the Gaza Strip. And at the same time, I think since that same time, you have about 250, 240 IDF soldiers killed. So you have essentially the same number. I mean, one group is soldiers, the other ones are trying to rescue people, trying to provide aid.
They're basically helping civilians.
Right? So, I mean, that's really, really scary stuff and really disturbing. But I guess right to the point, Patrick, I mean, we hear, words of, as you said, this was an accident, but we know that through data, this doesn't look like that at all. But how much of a change really can we expect to see from the IDF in this ongoing offensive?
Well, I also wanted to mention that there's 34,000 dead on top of just the hundreds of aid workers who have been killed, and that most of those are civilians as well.
Absolutely.
But whether or not we can expect change, we just don't know, because the world is out of control with being unwilling to confront the Israelis for this. I mean, this is essentially murder. A Polish citizen, several UK citizens, Australian citizen, an American citizen were killed in a deliberate strike. How is the government supposed to react to that? It's murder. In other contexts, this could be seen as an act of war. Clearly, there's not going to be a military confrontation between Poland and Israel. But I really would hope that world leaders would look at a situation like this and say, why are we sending weapons to these people? Why are we letting them use artificial intelligence to target civilians using weapons that we sell them? Why are we sending them money? Why are we sending them anything at all? It's insane. Like the world leaders are going to have to do something about this. You can't just keep letting them kill everything that moves in Gaza, and every piece of information that we get that comes out via leaks, via investigations, shows that they have a policy of targeting civilians. This is not a glitch. It's a feature of the Israeli military.
Which takes me to my next point. We know that route was prearranged, so it wasn't just I would say a mistake. We know that, for example, in March there was an emergence of a horrific video where we had 4 young Palestinian men, which none of them were armed. They were killed casually strolling on the wasteland. In January, 2 members of Al Jazeera crew, basically media members of the media like us, they were targeted and there was a strike on the car. We had Israeli hostages who were gunned down as they were waving white flags and speaking in Hebrew. My question is, what happened to Israel's rule of engagement? Because obviously we're talking about civilians, we're talking about the members of the press, we are talking about humanitarian aid workers who are there to help civilians. What happened to the rule of engagement in Israel? It's IDF.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that their rules of engagement do not in any way prioritize the safety of civilians. If you look at drone footage coming out of the Ukraine war, drones of the Ukrainians targeting Russian infantry and Russian soldiers, you clearly have a distinction between civilian and military objects. The Ukrainians are not standing around on drone consoles bombing Moscow streets, targeting civilians specifically. That's not how an honorable war is fought. This is how a colonial war of extermination is fought. It's in terms of rules of engagement, other militaries throughout the world have professional ethics somewhat, even though they violate them in many circumstances. But we had circumstances even where Israeli military leaders had to tell soldiers, oh, if you see people with their hands up, don't shoot them. Now, it's ridiculous to assume that any professional military would not already be training people with those types of rules of engagement. Mm-hmm. They are fighting an enemy that they see as inhuman, and that view of the inhumanity of Hamas has been extended to how they see all Palestinian civilians. This is unjustifiable. It's an act of murder.
I mean, these are raw images. There's a lot of emotion, a lot of anger here from many sides. We know that. We can feel that internationally. But at the same time as well, much as the international community is riled up because of this, and rightly so, and these 7 victims, as you've alluded to, this accounts to murder. Let's not forget all those Palestinians, especially young children, who are also suffering under famine that has been confirmed by the United Nations and different agencies. I think there's even several aid ships that have now actually turned around, 240 tons of aid that is returning back to Cyprus. Aid organizations pulling out, suspending that, the UAE included. What does this mean for aid and for this, it seems, inevitable, horrific, continuing famine for the people of Gaza?
We cannot exterminate these people with one hand while pretending that we're willing to feed them with the other hand. The problem, as it always is in these situations, is that people are getting bombed. You cannot safely distribute food when any convoy of vehicles is going to be targeted, especially in what Israel has deemed so-called kill zones, where they basically shoot anything that moves. So the principal issue is the war. If you want humanitarian aid to get in, end the war. And if you want to end the war, international leaders have to pressure Israel. It is the only way to get aid in. There have been, and also we see that attacks on the media, attacks on humanitarian aid convoys are also paired with political attacks. For example, Israel is trying to ban Al Jazeera right now, or trying to kick out Al Jazeera journalists, and also they're making very dubious claims against the United Nations Relief Works Agency to try and get that shut down as well. So at what point, what have they not bombed? They've bombed civilians, they've bombed humanitarian aid convoys, they've bombed the media, they've bombed Americans, they've bombed Polish citizens. There's nothing left for them to bomb. And so far, we've only seen 2 hostages rescued and several killed by the IDF. Mm-hmm. So it's madness. The only thing that world leaders can do now is call for a ceasefire. But
at the same time, I think it needs to be noted that I think the most hostages were released ironically, during that ceasefire that held momentarily. But a tragic thing to continue to observing and commenting on. Look, we'll have to end it there. Thank you so much there, Patrick Hilsman.
Patrick Hilsman, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.